first of all, I want to just say that well, I appreciate the message from McHugh. That was amazing. So probably a little more comical than what I'm going to have here, and I'm going to go ahead and apologize up front. He said he filled his 5-minute window. Miss April sent me a message yesterday, and she said you have a 15-minute window. So I'm going to try to be the hero here and try to cut that shorter than 15 minutes, and so we're going to try to make it a little easier there. Miss April, I appreciate you and the Chamber for allowing me the opportunity to speak. Last year, I was honored with the Young Professionals Award, and when I received the call that said, look, you've been nominated for this Young Professionals Award, I immediately said, well, I'm really not young. Are you sure that I qualify for this? And then I get here for that event, and I see Kelsey Moak here, who was a student when I was principal. So then I felt really old, and then I probably didn't qualify. So, and I was also shocked that I was coming from public education, where many of you are actually from private sectors. So I figured that was a huge difference. But when we think about it, we all have to be thinking about the changes in educational trends as well as the job market. A lot of the students that we have today that's actually in our schools, those students, a large percent of those students will actually move on to a career that's not even available today. It doesn't even exist. And about 40% of those jobs that we have currently, that will be jobs that will not even be in existence in the next 20 years. So it's important that we all work together, that we're all on the same page, so that we can prepare students actually for the future to be successful. And by doing that, we're actually going to allow our economy to prosper, because education is truly the backbone of a prosperous economy. So we all must work together. So I started thinking about when Miss April called me, what do I want to say? And I started immediately saying, okay, well, what is a young professional? And the first thing that came to mind for me when I was thinking about that was someone who's dedicated, someone who is willing to embrace a challenge, that had the ability to take the risk and was okay with taking the risk, and then also could overcome the naysayers that you would encounter. So the first part, let's think about dedication. Obviously, we've got to be dedicated to the goal and dedicated to what we want. We can't think about let's just go to work and let's stay there from the time our starting time to our end time. We've got to have something that's going to differentiate you from the other professionals in the field. Because if we don't differentiate you between the other professionals, you kind of just fit into that groove. And so you have to be willing to put in that extra time and stay dedicated, because your whole thought process really needs to be thinking about that you're putting in the work for the job that you want, opposed to the job that you actually have. Because if we're just putting it in for the job that we have, are we really pushing forward and doing all that we can to succeed and then actually have a major impact on what's going on? So I encourage you to think about dedication and think about let's move out, let's step out of our comfort zone, and let's not just settle for that status quo, because when we do so, we're not doing what's best for our community, we're not doing what's best for our families. So let's push forward with that. Because when you think about it, our careers really just become part of our daily life, and that's the way it was for me. Education truly was just ingrained in my everyday life. My wife still gives me grief, probably almost on a daily basis, because in order for us to go on a honeymoon, we had to get married on a school holiday because I needed to be at work. And our son, we had to plan for him to be born in the summer because my students needed me, so I needed to be there. So we had this whole little plan that was around education. So I think that just shows that's all part of being dedicated. Because I think the key point that we all have to remember is a person's success never outweighs or exceeds their dedication. And that's just something really that we have to think about. I feel that the career that I have has truly taught me to embrace challenge and to take risks. I started out at Denham Springs Freshman High. I started out student teaching in Livingston Parish when I was 20. And then as soon as I turned 21, I started at Denham Springs Freshman High. So it was a job that was available. It was actually actually outside of my certification area, but it was an opportunity to secure a position for a starving college student who needed a job. So it was step out of my comfort zone and let's take part to get my foot in the door. And that's basically the way that my career started. And right after I started, I really knew that I wanted to go further. So I started my master's degree. And as soon as after finishing it, on my 6th year of teaching, I had the opportunity to go to accept a position at Springfield Middle School, which there again was outside of my comfort zone because I was a high school person at heart, and that was a sure thing. So it was a temporary position, and I had a brand new ag classroom, a brand new shop facility, something that was state of the art. It was my first year actually teaching in that new facility, and I had a FFA program that I had put so much blood, sweat, and tears into. You just couldn't imagine the number of hours I had put into that for 5 years. And I was going to have to step away from that to take a temporary position, not really knowing what the future was going to hold. But I just kept telling myself that there was no reward that you didn't have to take a risk for. And that was kind of what kept me grounded and was able to push me to move forward. And I just thought about it, if I go and do this is going to help me in my future endeavors. And then in 2006, that was probably the most exciting time for me. That was an unbelievable year. I actually became a father and a principal all in the same year, all in the same week. So it was a little crazy that week. And basically, it was an elementary position, which there again was totally outside of my comfort zone. And the opportunity came up for me to interview, and we were at the hospital where we had just had our son, and I had experienced shock there as well, because I know there's lots of you that have children or new parents or whatever. When we had the baby, and the nurse just gives us this baby and says like, all right, well, we'll see y'all in the morning or whatever. And I'm like, I don't have a clue what to do with this thing. So just like I felt there, the next day when I left the hospital to go and interview, Summer and Taylor's at the hospital, and I go and I interview, and I go back and she's sitting in a wheelchair, her and Taylor, and I'm like, what are you doing? She says, well, I'm discharged. I need a ride home. So, and I say that because success doesn't come from this little pretty, neatly wrapped package with a bow on it. Success is something that you have to work for. It doesn't always come when we think it's going to come, but we have to push forward for that. It would have been really easy for me to say, this is not the right time for me. I'm preoccupied with being a new father, and it's just really not the best time for me. But I would encourage you never to pass up an opportunity, because you have no clue what that opportunity is going to lead to in the future. So I think that's just a key point that we need to all remember. So at 28 years old, I arrived at an elementary school, and I was the leader of that school, and I was the leader who had probably not stepped foot on an elementary school campus since I was in elementary school. So it was very, very new, a new culture for me. And I did not know a person on the campus. And then my first thing that I had to do, my first task, was to hire an assistant principal. So we went through that interview process, and I had to make one of those hard decisions because I really needed someone that was going to feel my weakness. So after that interview process, I actually hired someone who was not on staff at that school, and there was actually staff members that applied for that position as well. And that's a very hard thing to do, but it was the big picture thing of what needed to happen for success to occur. So it was incredibly risky to have the leaders of that school, both of you, with no ties to that community, no ties to the students there, to have to go in and try to build that trust. And that was probably the most rewarding time of my career. It was so much change, but like everybody was happy, and it was just a learning process. And the time you got there, it felt like it was time to go home just because you were having fun with what you were doing. So I encourage you to step out of your comfort zone and make some changes and be willing to take those risks, because at some point those risks are going to pay off. And so despite the fears that I had going in, because if I said I wasn't real nervous about going to an elementary school, I would be lying. Despite those fears, that was probably the best portion of my career, and I would probably do it again any day, just because there's so much support there. But after a year at that school, another door opened, so it was time to make another decision of what should I do. And I really wasn't sure of what I should do, but after thinking about it a lot and trying to think about, I really shouldn't pass up an opportunity, I had that opportunity to go back to Springfield High, where a lot of my teaching experience was from, and I was able to go back there as the principal. So after really thinking about it, I said, okay, I'm gonna try it out, I'm gonna do it, and I'm gonna give back to that community that was so good to me, and I can have a lot of impact there. So it was a big change, because I was going from a place where all these little kids were so happy. I think I opened thousands of ketchup packets on a weekly basis, because as you go through, they all need help and they've slobbered all over it, and you just help them. And then they're all running up to you to hug you, and you dodging the spaghetti on their face and whatever else is on them. So it was just rewarding. And then you're going to a high school where they may speak to you, and then again, they may not speak to you. So it was a change, but I will say it was a change that was a challenge. It was just a great place to be. And when I went there, I quickly realized that this opportunity that I really thought was going to be so good, there was going to be even more obstacles to face. And actually, when I was appointed principal there, the assistant principal decided that he was going on leave. So I was a new principal, a new high school principal. I was a new father, and I had no assistant principal. So I was kind of a one-man show, and it was a lot to juggle there. I was, there trying to increase the academics, put a spotlight on the academics, and increase the culture there, and you're trying to juggle all of that. But it was such a positive experience, and it all came out of facing the adversity of the change and being willing to take those risks. So last year, I completed my Future 5 application, and one of the questions was actually, what is your goal in 5 to 10 years? And on that question, I answered that in 5 to 10 years that I wanted to be the assistant superintendent or the superintendent. And I really think it's my dedication and willingness to embrace a challenge, willingness to take risks, that actually landed me the position of assistant superintendent. And it's a great experience thus far, and I'm excited about the impact that I can have on a district level, where it's just, you can really touch students across the entire district opposed to just in one location. So it's an exciting time. And the last thing I want to close with is, since the start of my career, I have been told, you're too young. It's not your time. Your time will come. It's not your turn. Y'all, I didn't use that as an excuse to stay in my comfort zone. I used that as the fuel to be the driving force to just keep moving me forward. I had to put myself out there, which is hard sometimes. I had to put myself in the front, and I had to be my own advocate. We can't rely on others to be your voice. So you cannot allow someone else to be the voice for you. You have to be your own voice. The companies like Amazon and Apple, those companies, it didn't come easy for them. Jeff Bezos, as well as Steve Jobs, those guys, they went against what others thought, and they pushed forward for what they believed. And that's how they succeeded. So remember that everyone's going to have critics. You're all going to have those naysayers, but you have to hold your head high and kind of just stay focused on your goal and do what's right for you, because the thoughts of those naysayers, that's a reflection of them. It's not a reflection of you, but you need to use their thoughts to be the fuel that dedicates you to stay focused on your goal, embracing those challenges, and take risks when needed to be successful. So thank y'all.